Hi there, I'm going to do a review of the Gardena um, water meter for hose pipes, and I was umming and ahhing which of these to buy, whether to buy the Gardena one or a more generic one, and I went for the Gardena one despite it having fairly mixed reviews, so I thought it was worth doing my own YouTube review of the unit, because from the Amazon information it's not quite clear what it does. Well, let me say it does everything on the Amazon page, plus more, and this hopefully will clarify lots of the things that come up in the questions that people have asked and not got particularly clear answers to. So there's just one button to operate the unit, and this cycles around 4 what we would call registers on a normal electronic meter. So we start off with total number 1, then there's total number 2. So they're 2 independent totals which are resettable, either of them, by when that registers on the display by pressing and holding the same button for a couple of seconds. Then you'll see it goes back to 0. Then if I blow into the unit, that makes the impeller spin and you'll see the numbers counted up again. The third register is called auto, and this will count up as water goes through the unit, but then if flow stops for more than 2 seconds and restarts, when the flow restarts it will start counting from 0 again. So this could be useful for dosing things, or if you want to put exactly the same amount into several pots and stop and start the tap between them, and save you pressing the button to reset the display. So press and hold does nothing in the auto mode because there's nothing to reset. And then the fourth register is an instantaneous flow rate, which is in litres per minute by default. So this would just show you the instantaneous flow through the unit. Now if we press and hold the button in the litres per minute mode, it changes the display units between litres and gallons, so it's now in gallons per minute. And as noted in the instructions, which are very clear, there are 2 sets of instructions, one on the back card of the box, which are probably adequate in their own right, but then there are some quite comprehensive instructions here. It is in multiple languages, but even so it goes through how you go around the different display modes and how there are annunciators on the display for low battery and flow occurring. It then shows you how to change the battery and remove the hose fittings to get to the impeller to clean it. And then there's a page of instructions, which, here we are, there's one page here which is in English. And as those instructions say, when you change between units, it resets all the registers to 0. So that's one thing to bear in mind. You need to set your units before you do any measurements. So I would say it's pretty easy to use. Simply one button operation with a short press changing the register that's displayed and a long press to reset either of the totals or to change units. Now I'm going to do a couple of other things in this review. Firstly, I'm going to do some accuracy measurements and determine whether those gallons are imperial or US gallons, since that's not documented. And secondly, take it apart and see what's inside. One thing that people ask on the internet is, are the hose connectors removable so you can fit more permanent pipework maybe to the unit? And the answer is yes, they both just unscrew. And I would also suggest that anyone who has problems with the unit leaking should check that those connectors are screwed on tightly. There are rubber washers inside both the that end and inside the body the other end. Later I'll show you how to get the impeller out, which I forget to tell you at that stage involves taking that rubber washer out. So there's just standard 3/4 inch British standard pipe threads as you'd find on the end of a standard domestic garden hose tap, and you can get pipe fittings that fit that. Of course, one issue if you did permanently plumb it in, is that this end, that would stop you getting the electronics out to change the battery if you had something permanently fixed to that thread there. The water goes through the unit straight through the middle, which is basically a plastic pipe, so there's no danger of anything leaking. As you'll see later when I take the impeller out, that just probably has a magnet on which works through the wall of that plastic pipe. Now, given that it's an impeller meter, I would suspect that it probably is more accurate at low flows in some orientations than others. With a standard water meter, they will often specify that it's only calibrated for use either horizontally or vertically. So we'll put it in the different orientations and see how well it registers low flow rates. I would suspect probably it might work better vertically than horizontally. You can imagine if it's horizontal, the water might just trickle through the bottom of that without turning the impeller. Whereas if it's vertical and the water's randomly dropping through it, it's more likely to operate the impeller. Now it says on the packaging it's a smart flow meter, which is a slight lie, because it doesn't have any smart features as such as connecting to the internet or Wi-Fi. It's simply a standalone electronic meter. If you're a hacker, you could use the body of the unit and the impeller and put your own reed switch in there if it is a magnetic sensor on the impeller, which I haven't checked. And then you could take away the reed switch wires into a Arduino or other device and then make your own system up which maybe regulates flow using a solenoid valve or something like that, or just log flows over time maybe using an Arduino. So that's all possible if you want to dismantle your meter and use the body of it. So this is how the meter fits on the tap. It just clips on when you've got the clip-on hose connector on the tap, and it just sits there nicely. And I'm just going to try some quick flow measurement tests. So I'm going to fill this half-litre jug up. So with a fairly high flow going through the unit, we can see it's measured exactly half a litre to fill that half-litre jug, so that's pretty good. Okay, so this is the lowest sort of flow rate that it actually measures a flow on, and the display does bounce around a bit, but below this it doesn't register a flow at all. So I would say that's probably about half a litre a minute it's starting to register on. So let's see how accurate it is at that sort of flow rate. The instructions give you a maximum flow rate but not a minimum one. The lowest flow the meter is able to detect is about half a litre a minute. You'll see it's this sort of flow rate, and the display is bouncing around a bit. And I filled a jug up with it on this flow rate, and the meter only registered 0.2 litres to fill a half-litre jug up. So at very low flow rates it's not particularly going to be very accurate. If we increase the flow a bit, we can see then we're counting up nicely, and let's see what it takes to fill the jug. So it's our half-litre jug, and it's going to measure half a litre, so pretty good. So that is the lowest sort of flow rate that it's pretty accurate on. So just a few other tests to report the results of. So I've done a measurement of the meter gallons versus UK gallons, and 1.3 gallons as measured on the meter come out as 1 gallon as marked on the bucket, which I've determined are UK gallons, and the conversion is 1.2 to 1 US gallons to UK gallons. So it seems that the meter is most likely reading US gallons and not UK gallons. Secondly, looking at measuring low flow rates, down to 1 litre per minute, which is the lowest sort of stable read I can get, I'm getting correct metering in litres. I tried doing a test of half a litre per minute, where it was difficult to get a steady flow reading on the meter, and then it significantly under reads. And I did another measurement at 5 litres per minute, and that was coming out pretty much spot on. The specifications say that the maximum flow rate is 1,800 litres per hour, which comes out as 30 litres per minute. Well, I couldn't actually get that flow rate on the tap. With it on full bore, it was only giving 23 litres per minute on the meter, so my tap flow wasn't great enough to test the maximum throughput and what happens if you exceed that, whether it goes inaccurate or stops reporting. I also tried to test the accuracy with it located horizontally or vertically on the pipe, and even at 1 litre per minute that didn't seem to make any difference to the accuracy of the flow measurement. I thought we'd disassemble the unit to give it a better, more thorough review. And you can take the electronics out of the main body by pulling these tabs on the side while pressing the button so it clears the case. And then it just comes out like that. Now in the reviews people ask how waterproof the unit is. And we can get some idea of that by the construction. It's basically the circuit board is potted into the plastic enclosure using an epoxy resin, which makes it pretty waterproof. There are a couple of weak points which might compromise that. There's no actual waterproof rating on here, but if it was just all potted in, I would say it was IP68, the highest rating. The two weak points are the battery, and there's this rubber bung in the top of the battery compartment, so that's fairly waterproof, I guess. Maybe not completely submersible, it might get in there over time, but for less arduous conditions it would be okay. I would say the weakest point is the push button on the front, which is a rubber button which just goes straight onto the circuit board. So potentially there could be seepage around that. So therefore I would say that it's unlikely to be a problem if it's outside and you've got light drizzle falling onto the unit. But if there was heavy rain beating against it, or you drop it in a bucket of water, it is likely to become a problem. So there's an idea of the waterproofness. Finally, in the disassembly, the instructions tell you how you can take the impeller out for cleaning, and that comes out of the end with the female thread on, which would normally have the clicky hose connector on, and it just, once you've taken the clicky hose connector off, it just literally drops out. You can see if I blow into it there, the impeller goes round, and I guess it's probably got a magnet which triggers that sensor, that black sensor there on the circuit board. I have tried to look up the part number, but it didn't come up with anything. It's a 14334 MO/8, which I guess is probably a reed switch. It might be a Hall effect sensor, I'm not familiar with those. One other thing I should have said was, in order to take this unit out, the electronic unit, which is mainly removable to get to the battery, the other thing that holds it in place, as well as the push button, I'll put it back in now. Yeah, the other thing that holds it in place is the hose connector here, which screws on there, which you have to unscrew to get the electronics out. Well, I hope that review was useful. Thanks for watching.